counting? What up? You didn't do it. What up? I'm Bianca.
And I'm Adrianne.
And we're two creative women living in New York City going through a lot of stuff.
And that's why we're here to share and reflect on our experiences, and hopefully you guys can learn something from it.
Or you can just laugh with us.
In this episode of Women in the Wild,
What are we talking about?
self-love and how to practice it.
Interesting. How deep are we? How intimate are we getting?
I guess we can start by defining the most basic way, what is self-love, and
Okay.
It's basically a regard for your own happiness. It's super high level, so we always have to be aware of how we do it, because everybody has their own ways to do it.
That's true. That's why it's hard to define.
It is. So I want to ask you that question, is that,
What is self-love to me?
what is self-love to you? Or do you think we're born with the ability to love ourselves?
Okay. So to me, self-love is kind of like what you said, going for your own happiness, building towards your own happiness, knowing what makes you happy and trying to achieve that in a constant basis.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's something learned, because I don't think we're born with it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're born in this world and there's people taking care of us. We are not born a baby and knowing exactly what you need.
Yeah, the environment plays a big role in it.
Yeah.
I think is what you want to say.
And also, I think every person has a different way to love themselves, because every person needs different things.
Yeah. So for you personally, what are ways that you practice self-love?
Okay. So I just kind of think about, how can I be happier right now? If I'm in a moment where I want to practice self-love very consciously, sometimes you practice self-love just out of habit, or you have your workout routine or whatever. But if I'm in a point where I'm I want to practice self-love right now consciously, how can I do that? I would ask myself, how can I be happier? Sometimes that can be something as simple and dumb as watching a Netflix show. And sometimes it can be a little bit more personal. To me, playing piano makes me happy. I can be in a crappy mood. I could have had a bad day, but if I can play a song on the piano, I feel really cool. And I get happy.
Yeah.
I've been practicing yoga a lot. Actually, I had a mini episode. When was it? Sunday? When was the day that I was freaking out because my co-star said everything is gonna break that day? Was that Sunday?
Yeah, I think that was Sunday. Yeah, that was Sunday.
Yeah. I literally did a yoga routine twice. I told you. I did it the first time and I was so not in the mood to do it. I just put my mat and I was like, okay. And less than halfway through, I was so happy that I was doing it. That when it ended, I'm I'm gonna do this again. And so yoga lately for me, I want to say reading a book, but I've been really bad at that. But it can be really simple, even buying an ice cream, but just something that will contribute to your happiness and will also do you good, because many things can falsely contribute to your happiness, doing drugs, but also being healthy in the way you do it. So it usually involves working out.
Yeah,
or
avoiding unhealthy behaviors, I guess is what you're saying. To scale it back a little bit. I guess we're also taught in our younger selves that we, or even if at work, right? Everybody's busy. We live in New York. Everybody's doing something. Everybody feels it's easy to compare, and it's oh, I'm not doing enough, or blah blah blah. So then you end up just saying being too hard on yourself, and then you don't know how, you get overwhelmed, and it's I shouldn't be doing these things, and you avoid doing, like, even just the little things that you said, like yoga, taking the time to do it and like actively pursuing it, even though it's like in the beginning you didn't want to do it.
I really didn't want to.
And then halfway through it, you're like, oh, I'm so happy I'm going to do it again.
I was like smiling to myself and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I just did that pose.
Yeah, you texted me, you're like, I feel so much better now.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So then, what are other ways? I guess this week, what other than yoga, what I guess is an example where you had like a really difficult time and you had to like bring yourself back?
Like this week, this past week?
Or like any moment, like a significant moment where you're like, just couldn't.
Well, I've had times where I'm in a conversation and I'm like, out of love and respect to myself, I'm going to stand up and leave. Because I can't stand whatever that person is talking about. And like, obviously you also want to try talking to that person. Mm-hmm. But there are certain people that they just won't understand, and you're gonna have to separate yourself from that.
Yeah.
So I think a way to practice self-love is knowing what to separate yourself from, because there are things that are toxic and things that are damaging, and that we stay in for, it can be a million reasons. Yeah. Jobs, like
saying yes to things that we mean no
pressure,
to.
like group pressure, family, it's a huge one. So knowing what is essential for your, like what you have to get away from in order to live a happy life, and choosing you. It's like self-love is like an active decision of choosing yourself.
And there's no one way to do it, and that's the thing, is that everybody has their own system, ways to cope, and like things to do, activities, or combination of things. It doesn't have to be just one thing. So yeah,
and I think that relates a lot to what we were talking about last week.
Being worthy, finding oneself,
maintaining your sense of self.
Yeah,
I think that goes along with what we said last week, where it's like you have to
also like feel like you're worthy and like you love yourself in order for you to even want to pursue something. So, or like, yeah, it's a lot of like introspective thought. Like you really have to look within yourself and take the time. And that's the thing, like here in New York, we live such a fast-paced life. We deal with multiple people on a constant basis. Like today you just get home at like 7 o'clock and it's just like
8
or 8. Oh yeah, that's right, you got home at 8. And you know, we're inundated with like so many things that at the end of the day we're like, what are we gonna do now? Or it's just so easy to get overwhelmed that we forget the time to we forget to take the time to figure out what actually makes us happy, and to actually pursue these things like proactively, rather than saying like, oh, I'm gonna, like my room's so messy, I'm gonna wake up really crappy looking at this mess, and then I refuse to do something about it, and then I wake up to that mess, and it's like, it's just self-perpetuating.
Yeah, there are things that we definitely are guilty for, that are just contributing to our own sadness.
Exactly. So sometimes it's doing something about it, and just, you know, it may take the course of like a couple days, but at least like you check one thing off your list at the start of the day to like feel like you've already accomplished something, and it's easier to keep doing or accomplishing more things when you check off like a little thing too.
Sorry, and here's the thing. I think the reason why so many people have a problem with self-love is because we are born into a world where other people are providing what we need for us, like our parents.
Yeah,
you know?
Babies are egocentric.
We're just like there.
Feed me,
and our parents are like, here's food, here's clothes, here's toys, here's people you can interact with, here's your family, we all love you. And then you grow up, and I think as a kid you don't really think about that because you're just like having your day-to-day,
your
going
needs are
to
met.
school,
Yep.
and like having a kid's meal at McDonald's or whatever. But then I think as a teenager you start to experience some really weird emotions. And then as an adult, you're like, I never learned how to even take care of myself. When you go into leaving your parents' house and being on your own for the first time, and going
And
to
dealing
college
with
and not having people like your parents there all the time to like protect you and stuff. So at a certain point, you have to face a lot of bad situations, and those situations are the ones that are gonna make you think about how can I help myself when there's no one else? How can I love myself, protect myself, and like kind of endure
Yeah.
through this horrible world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in moments of growth, there's like a lot of chances to also like learn. And I guess one of the things that we also go through as kids is like wanting to just feel accepted. And it's hard to do that. Like it's hard to maintain a sense of self, one, when you want to be accepted because it's hard, it's easy to, succumb to peer pressure. And two, it's like, well, how can you love yourself if you're also just mimicking other people's behaviors, right? So it's like, okay, then how do you learn to accept yourself when like your focus all of like high school and like preschool, grade school, whatever, growing up, it's like, I just want to be accepted. How do I do that? And like as adults, like now we have the tools to actually choose our crowd and be exposed to all these different cultures and behaviors and, actually surround ourselves with people that make us happy. And like what you said a while ago, where you can cut off people that also put you down.
And the big point that you brought up is when we're growing up, it's as kids and teenagers, it's more about how can I be accepted in this group of people? How can people accept me? I want to feel accepted. But then when you're an adult and you're on your own and whatever and building your own life, it's more about you accepting yourself, because you spent all your freaking life before that just worrying about what people are thinking about you and whether they like you or not. So then after you're done with all that, then you're like, okay, but then what about me? Who have I become while I was worrying so much about what freaking Adrian thought of me in high school?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's a big personal thing for me. Like 100% back in DR, in Santo Domingo, I was so worried about what people thought about me, and I was in such a like bad environment too, like mean people and stuff. So I grew up just thinking about how can these people like me, and thankfully I did not ever like try to be like them or like try to fit in that badly where I would like dress like the popular girl or anything like that. But I did have low self-esteem because I knew I wasn't like them, and I know they didn't like me, and I didn't change, but I just felt like I was the odd one out or like the weird one or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I grew up and I moved and I'm like my own new person now. Or not new person, but I'm like without those people anymore. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of like who I am. I like that I'm not worried about getting drunk every weekend and not wearing fancy clothes and impressing
You're more
people.
secure. That's the word, I think. Like, and that's like we have the need to feel secure. Like that's what I also wrote down here is that like as children, like naturally we want to feel secure. Like that's what babies innately need, is just to feel security and like stability, and that's what like children crave. And like there have been psychological like tests and experiments and observations that like children who don't receive stability and like all those things have psychological problems growing up, or like a lack of that ends up in like a low self-esteem or like these kinds of characteristics. So it's like it could be anything from like really either like strict parents, which is what we've experienced, or like
hello Mr. Mom and Dad.
Hello Mr. and Mrs. Mom and Dad, or like parents who have no restrictions at all. So like you have no self-control because you're just like there's no limits, you do whatever you want, whatever. And then it's just also culture. That's living in New York, you're exposed to different kinds of culture and you have to adapt. But like
this is kind of not the topic, but I never realized that having non-strict parents can also be like just as bad. Because obviously I had strict parents.
Boundaries.
And I had strict parents, so every time I had a friend that had like lazy whatever parents, I was so jealous. I was like, oh my god, you can do anything you want. Like they don't care. That's amazing. But actually, one of my best friends, you're definitely top 2.
How dare you? Just kidding.
Maybe top 1. One of my best friends, she opened up to me recently about like, you know what, I actually wish my parents were more strict because I ended up doing so many things that I regret. that if I had strict parents, that wouldn't have happened probably. But anyway, that's not even the topic. But
no, but yeah,
it's just interesting
relating.
how there's no right or wrong. There has to everything in life is about
it's a balance. Yeah.
Bringing it back to self-love.
Yes.
That's why.
Self-love is a balance of also self-hatred. That's what it actually is. Is that
explain, please.
Basically, you have like these tendencies to balance out. That it's like okay, that's the best example, and this is specific to women or like girls. When we're young, we're taught like to repress like compliments, like oh you're gorgeous, and you're like no, like you take it. It's like I'm not. But like that's how we're taught. Like as kids, like we can't be narcissistic or like otherwise you're thought to be like one narcissistic, arrogant, or just like better than everybody else. When really like when you grow up, then you don't know how to actually accept yourself. Like oh I am actually good at this. Like for example, like I'm trying to apply to like full-time jobs lately, and it's so hard to write things down on my resume. Like that's the thing that I struggle with. Like every morning I try to like write things down, and it's so hard because it's like okay yeah I do know my accomplishments in my head, but like writing them down on a piece of paper and actually like oh yeah I have done this, like I am qualified for these roles that are more senior and things like this. And it's like why did I never think that I was qualified ever? And I kept stopping myself from like even considering myself for those roles when I was like, oh, why are these roles like either like not exciting for me because it's not so challenging, or like I'm gonna learn anything, or like this is not applicable to my skills. Then I look at like the higher level like roles and it's like, oh, I'm actually qualified for these things. And it's like, why can't I ever articulate that for myself, that it's like I do have my own accomplishments, like why do I put myself down? So like as kids, especially for like girls, it's like we're taught to like oh I'm not, we're never taught to like, or like only later in my life did I learn it's like don't be fishing for compliments, just take it, just say thank you and be grateful for it. Like don't, it's like oh, I'm not pretty, blah blah blah. So you don't take the comment and be done with it.
Okay.
Accept it, right? That's
and believe it.
And believe
also, that whole mentality that we grew up with, it messes with your self-esteem so much that when not only we deny it when people say it, but also we really don't believe it. We're like, of course not. Like this person's crazy. I'm not that pretty or whatever. So yeah, when people tell you something, believe it. Just like I tell you, you're beautiful every day.
Oh, thank you, and so
worthy of all the love.
Yeah, and if you guys haven't checked out our previous episode, if you're just jumping into episode 6 now, our last episode was about loving oneself and maintaining sense of self. And I feel like it's a good episode to either go back to or watch again when if you're just jumping into this.
So here's the thing.
Next thing.
Do you think self-love is selfish?
No, because the way and you can expound on this, but I guess the shortest way to put this is if you love yourself, and it's so corny, then it's easier for you to take care of other people. And the best example is when you're on the airplane and you have to put on the mask.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, in emergencies, please put on your mask first and then help other people.
Don't be a hero.
This
ain't no Superman or Spider-Man movie.
Don't be a martyr. Put the mask on, because then otherwise, if you don't, then you're useless to everybody else. And like, there's only one you. You have very specific, unique qualities that are only you can do. So like, if you don't take care of yourself, then like, you can contribute less to the world. So.
You know, so I've been practicing self-love a lot, not just in working out, which is a thing we're doing now, like waking up early to work out. That's like putting time aside for ourselves. Working on my own personal projects because I know I feel more fulfilled when I do. Choosing my friends wisely. Like I've been practicing all of those things for a while, and this is super like basic example, but this morning I got a text, and it was kind of like a passive-aggressive text. Like I wasn't sure if they were trying to offend me or not.
From who?
Oh, girls, I'll tell you later.
Tell
You don't
the
know
podcast.
them. You don't know them. Well,
A guy, a girl?
It's a girl.
It's a
and
girl.
it's a friend. And at the end of the day, she wasn't trying to insult me.
Oh, okay.
But when I read it, I'm like, the hell? And I remember while processing that whole text and like what I was gonna reply and all that, for some reason, like my head went back to when I was in high school, or like just freaking dog.
Sorry, we live in an apartment building in New York City.
We're gonna have to figure this out. This is unacceptable. Anyway, so I was comparing myself. Like, I know if this had happened 5, 7 years ago, I would be probably crying right now. Like, just like that. Like, I would get a text and I would cry because I would get hurt so easily, because all I knew was how people treated me. That's all I knew. I didn't know how to like treat myself in a way that I was comfortable with, like just that. So I knew that getting a text like that a few years back would have like not destroyed me, but like really upset me, or like really, you know, when that thing like hurts and where you just feel it in your heart, like it hurts. I didn't even feel that. This morning I saw it and I like kind of laughed. And I'm like, this person's crazy. And I kept doing my thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why then I was like kind of surprised at my own reaction. I was like, did I just react to that like that? Like, I know back then this would have hurt me so much. Like, I was weaker, basically.
Yeah.
So I think, and yeah, then I talked to her and everything was fine. But the lesson here is that practicing self-love also makes you stronger.
Yeah.
Because you know that you love yourself, and you know that you're providing things for yourself in order for you to be happy and for your life to be a happy one, that other people's like attacks matter less, because you're so secure with like the things that you've built for yourself.
Yeah.
I'm so
secure.
Yeah. I'm so secure with like the friend group that I have, for example. Like, some of the thoughts that came to my head when that was happening, it was like, I like her and she's a friend, but I have Adrian. Like, if this friendship is about to end today, like, I have Adrian, Patricia, Isabella, Marina. Like, I start...
Yeah, you can just list it down.
Like, I'll be okay. And also, if I didn't have those people, I'm also really busy working on my music video and, like, going freelance and, like, doing all these other things. Also, I, like... No, I'm not going there.
You're diversifying your happiness. In short, you're not putting all your happiness in one basket, that if somebody were to ever take that basket away, in one move, everything's taken away. So it's good. I guess it's another tip, is that you diversify your happiness.
Yes. Like, there are more things that make you happy, and you're conscious of that, and you also practice those things with enough consistency that you know they're there for you when you need them. Like, even if I didn't have friends and I didn't have projects, well, I have yoga, for example. So that's why it's important to practice self-love, because you can provide happiness to yourself in so many different ways, and that way every little detail in your life doesn't matter as much. Does that make sense? So yeah, I think it's about protecting yourself, like you're saying.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
I agree. I mean, one of the ways that I diversify my happiness lately is I've been attending like classes, like workshops and things, so that my brain still gets stimulated. Because I'm just working by myself. Yeah, and plus like I have someplace to be, and like I signed up for it, so it's like I should be there. You know, whereas like the office, it's like nobody's really expecting me to go. Like, I really go like if I need to, or like if I'm already in the city, then I'll go. Like, the office is secondary for me, so it's kind of like, okay, now I get to go do something, spend time outside. I'm back on the city bike, which is like something that I loved when I used to live on the Lower East Side, and so like now I'm actually, the weather is getting so much better, so like that's been away. The gym has been great, and just getting something as simple as like French press coffee at home, because I don't have to go outside to get my first like cup of coffee, you know. Like, the first thing I do now is just sit and take my time. That's not true.
The first thing you do
every
day is FaceTime me.
Yes.
Can we do a reenacting of our mornings?
It's
for
the same
audience?
Every morning.
Wait,
okay,
where's my phone? Hold on.
Okay, she will get her phone. For those of you listening, she's getting up and getting her phone. Okay, she has
First
her
of
phone.
all, by the way, I've never told you this. And yes, this is part of the topic, everyone, because
It
this
is.
is how we practice self-love. Like, I've learned so much from, like, the past 2 weeks, is it?
It's only been 2 weeks, but there have been so much changes, guys. And it's
Basically,
like,
one day I was like, Adrian, I need a morning routine again because I know it makes me happy.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my God, me too. So we're helping each other. So that is self-love, but we're like each other's extra push
yeah.
to love ourselves. It's like, get up, go freaking do that thing you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, get other people involved in your happiness, you know? Like, that's the thing. Like, if you know that you do something well, share it. Like, and it comes back to you. It really does. Because at the end of the day, it's like, oh, I'm actually out of bed. You know, it helps us.
So it's a process.
The same, yeah.
Anyway,
and this is some things that took time, you know.
If it wasn't because of you, I would probably still be waking up at 9 a.m.
I would be waking up at 11, okay? Because of all the jet lag. So I was in the West Coast, so I was just like behind 3 hours for like the longest time.
Every episode you say you're jet lagged from the West Coast.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure.
And now it's like, I'm actually good.
Anyway, I have alarm 2 minutes before the time that I know you're gonna call me so that I can be up to answer your call. Just so you know. So she calls me at 6:30 a.m. I have an alarm at 6:28, and then I have an alarm at 6:30.
You're so funny because I have an alarm at 6:29. So that I have time, like I have a minute to myself to be like,
before you call me.
At the very least, coherent. Because I am just like, hello. Or no, what do I say? Good morning. In that tone every time. Good morning. Arise and shine. Thank God for Google because I never have to like actually put my alarm.
Anyway, let's do this.
Yeah.
So. Hi.
Good morning.
Wake up.
How was your day yesterday?
Let's go. Let's do this.
Ooh, let me go check my co-star.
Get out of bed.
At least turn on a light.
And then I go over and turn on that little light next to my bed. And I always say the same thing every morning. It's like, oh my God, that's so bright.
And I open my door just like a little bit to let some light in.
It's a whole process. I think we take like 15 minutes just to get out of the bed.
That's why it's important to call at 6:30 because when we were doing it at 7, we were done at like, no, it took forever. Like 6:30 is necessary so we could take her even more time.
Yeah, and you know what I love? That now you know my morning routine so well. You're like, turn on your AC so the room is warm.
That was this morning, yeah. Because yesterday you told me.
Because my room is freezing in the morning and I can't get out of bed until it gets warmer and I can actually touch the floor without dying. So she's now telling me like, turn on the heater. And I'm like, okay, Mom.
Remember the little things, guys, because it's important.
But it's
the impact.
Mm-hmm. But yes, it's definitely contributed to my self-love. Because after that whole process of getting up and doing the coffee, then I'm so happy. Like, there hasn't been a day that I do that and I'm like, this wasn't worth it. Every day is like, I am so happy that I'm like having this time to myself, whether it's going to the gym or to a class or even just, I've only stayed home once, I think. But even that day, I think I did yoga or something.
Yeah.
And it gets you ready for the day and you know that you're doing better for yourself than I was when I was waking up at 9 a.m.
Yeah, no, the 4 extra hours help. Because, like, for me to even muster up some, like, motivation, because lately it's just, I'm just starting from scratch, basically. So, like, there's a lot of, like, research involved, like, you know, market research in terms of, like, starting a business. You have to make sure that, like, you know, what you're actually building is sustainable and will make money. So it's, like, just been a lot of, like, reading. And I've been so impatient. And, like, I love what you told me before where you were like, don't be so, like, perfectionist. Like, don't be such a perfectionist because then otherwise you're, like, I'm not going to end up doing anything. So it's, like, I have to, like, move away.
What were you trying to do when I said that?
I think...
you said you almost didn't do anything today.
Yeah, and it was, like, the resume thing because I was so stuck. Like, the mornings now help me actually, like, journal and, like, take the time to, like, gain back, like, my self-confidence because, like, I feel like every night when I go to bed it, like, kind of resets a little bit because I'm not, like, there, like, mentally yet. I'm still working through a lot of things. So it was like, oh, the morning actually helps me like put my pieces back together, and like the coffee helps, and it's like, okay, slowly like confidence comes back in, slowly ego comes back in, slowly like motivation and passion comes back in. But it's a process, and having 4 hours to do that is wonderful, because before I had this, couldn't get myself to the train.
And also that
And, like,
it lowers your self-esteem when you do less, because you know consciously like,
yeah,
I'm not doing anything to like better myself. And
if I woke up at like, if I woke up at 11, then if I went through this whole process of like putting myself back, like it would take me like, my day would start at like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And that doesn't look like I'm like aggressively like writing internally. Like I can sometimes literally be like staring at a couch, like outside the window at the same thing, and like not even know that I haven't moved, because I'm like working through so many things internally that like, wow. Because I'm like, in my head, I'm like, get yourself up off the couch. Like, you need to do something, at least one thing. And sometimes that one thing is like literally like taking a walk outside. It's pathetic sometimes. Like, it's crazy, totally, but like sometimes that's just what the way it is. Or like going back to what I was saying about perfectionism, is that sometimes like we expect perfection so much that, or like we just want the best for ourselves too, that we end up doing nothing. And so I like the way
and then you feel worse.
Just do it, and then you feel worse
because you didn't do anything, and like a year has passed and you didn't do anything.
Exactly. So it's just like, you know what? At some point, Nike's right. Just do it.
And also, there's no way that let's say you spend a whole year just making mistakes. Every month you made like a mistake at trying to do something. At least you know by the end of the year that there are 12 things that you shouldn't be doing, for example. You know what I mean? Like, if you're failing, or that you can just keep improving on, but even when you make mistakes, you're somehow narrowing down whatever it is that you're meant to be doing. You know, if you're just a person that doesn't know what to do and you're just trying all things, for example, like if you failed 25 times, then there are 25 things that you now discarded off your list.
Yeah.
Go on to the next thing. But if you didn't do anything that whole year, then you still have 25 to go at some point in your life.
Exactly.
And to fail on. Hope that makes sense.
And it's also like not going to like back to unhealthy behaviors. Like when those moments are like happen where like, oh, I'm alone, my roommates aren't home, and I'm like, what am I gonna do myself? I need something.
To say something about that.
Really? Like I just need something to kind of like jolt me out of like my like inability to like move. So sometimes it's, what was my point? It's like my first recoil like instinct would be to call whoever I'm with, my partner or whatever, you know. And it's like one of the things about like working for myself is that everybody's at their day job. Like I can't bother anybody.
You can always bother me.
I mean, I know I can, but also it's like
I bother you while I'm at my office.
I know, but it's like I shouldn't have to. So, you know, it's like that's the importance of self-love, is that you can't, you find these things to diversify, and it's like you find a lot of ways to cope and anchor yourself in like different kinds of happiness, because when you need it and there's like absolutely nobody or nothing around to stimulate you out of like depression, sadness, or just like your self-hatred, it's so important to go back to your coping mechanisms, and that's like, and not having to depend on external factors. So yeah, it can be like the things you listed a while ago, like taking a walk, hot bath, meditating.
Yeah, I actually haven't listed that for the audience yet. But basically, we were having a conversation earlier for the people listening.
Yeah. I want to hear your list.
The whole idea is identifying what does us good and what doesn't. And wait, like this is my definition of self-love, sorry. So the definition is identifying what does us good and what doesn't, and choosing to go for/do what's best for us. And that's why typical forms of self-love are usually working out, yoga, taking a hot bath, meditating, masturbating, whatever works for you. But basically knowing what are those feel-good things for you, even if it's something instant or whatever, that's also healthy.
Yeah.
And just knowing that is so powerful, because at a moment where you're desperate and sad, you already know those things to the top of your head, and you can like
you can actually exercise it. or act on it.
I was also gonna say that another reason why I love our morning routine is because now I'm really sleepy earlier. Like I wasn't sleeping until like 3 a.m. every day. Like it makes sense. I was waking up at 9. So if you calculate, like I was even getting good sleep. At,
and you're working out too, so you're expending more energy throughout the day too.
But here's the thing. I would get home at 7:30ish. Maybe watch like Emma Chamberlain
Yeah, you
for like
too.
an hour, take a shower, pack my bag for the next day, then lay on my bed, but I wouldn't be sleepy, so I just stay on my phone until like 3 a.m. And that was a vicious cycle because like after 9 or 10, it's like it was still early, but it was too late for me to like start working on something.
Yeah.
And also my brain was like, I just got off work, so like my brain just wants to rest. So it was just like this chunk of like 5 hours where I did nothing. And that was affecting my self-esteem so much.
Yeah.
Because I knew I was having, like, I was going to bed super late. I was being super unproductive. Then the next morning I was like groggy and whatever. Like there was nothing good about that routine. And also I learned through that I'm a day person. Like if one person asked me once, like, if you could have daytime forever and nighttime forever, which one would you choose? I would choose daytime. There's a lot of people that say nighttime.
Yeah.
I definitely choose daytime.
I'm totally shifting to team daytime.
Team daytime.
Yeah, now in this life, yes. I would never have thought I would say that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Before you were a night person?
Oh yeah, I'm a convert.
Okay. But basically, nighttime made me really sad. Like, I had a lot of sad nights with that routine where I would just like start. I mean, I was doing nothing, so of course I would start thinking. Last year was like a very like heartbreaking year, so I would like start thinking a lot and like start crying. It was bad, like for my emotional health too. So I'm like, how do I get out of this? And like, this was the perfect solution because now I wake up super extra early and I'm sleepy by 11 or 12.
And you're pressured to go to bed because it's like,
right, and I want to go to bed because I know I'll feel better in the morning if I have a good night's sleep. So that was like a really smart way to get rid of those shitty 5 hours that I was doing every night. And that's also why I'm like so much happier now. But I was literally crying like at least once a week.
Yeah, no, I haven't had like a really bad panic attack this week, so.
Right, and your thing is panic attack. So that's important, like to know where you're at your worst and what are the things causing that so that you can get rid of that.
Oh, I totally got rid of a lot of things. Like I just canceled 3 trips just because it's like necessary.
Really?
I did, yeah.
So checking in with yourself.
That's
when you're sad. Yes, you're sad and you're probably thinking about something that's making you sad, but also try to think about, why am I sad right now? Like, why right now? Like, why at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday? Like, what happened today? Like, try to reflect on your day, on your past month, whatever it is. But it's so important to recognize those things because then that's the first step towards eliminating bad habits.
Yeah, it's just evaluating and taking the time to do that.
And one of our questions was, how do you give yourself what others failed to? And my answer to that was reflecting. Because what other people were giving, like what were those things that people were giving to you or that people failed to give to you? And in order to recognize them, you have to reflect and like think back and see what they were doing or what they weren't doing so that you can do those things for yourself.
Yeah.
Did you have another answer for that?
Yeah, the other thing is self-love is also learning to adapt. You know, sometimes like things don't always go our way. And sometimes when we've planned a lot of things and then it doesn't happen, we can be really hard on ourselves. And because of that, it's hard to actually move forward with other things that you have to do because like the world keeps moving. And then like taking time to, like you said, just process either pain or taking time to process like being grateful, because sometimes like things actually do turn out pretty great, and that we're so busy going on like, oh great, you've gone through this next thing, it made me so happy, let me go on to the next, and that made me happy, and then I'm gonna go on to the next thing and that made me happy, and then you go on to the next one and it's like, okay, this like didn't make me happy, but let me go do the next one, and it's like that, and it's like, okay, well, how do you actually consistently do that? And like when it doesn't happen, turn that pain into something that's actually either powerful and like learning or like just growth.
Also, we have to add, I think it's really important. Something that helped me a lot by the end of last year, and I think is why this year has been a lot better for me emotionally, is that very, very briefly, it was only 3 times, and I wish it was more, I just don't have that kind of money. I did therapy. And in those 3 sessions, I learned so much, and I saw how many things I was doing wrong, and how much I was depending on people and stuff like that. And I know you also see someone or talk to someone.
Yeah, constantly, once a week. Yes.
That's pretty constantly.
Yeah, I do. It's necessary.
We have to talk after this.
Yeah, and I'm on medication, I told you.
So what I'm trying to say is sometimes figuring this stuff is not easy. It sounds easy to be like, oh, just reflect and look back and
it takes a village.
But not only it takes a village, but also it's like being socially smart. It's like it's knowledge. It's something that is learned, and there are people that study that. So if you're having a hard time figuring out what makes you happy, what doesn't, why you're sad, and all those emotional questions, sometimes having a professional help. Well, not sometimes, it always helps, unless they're a best therapist.
Well, yeah, well, finding a therapist is also a process in and of itself.
True.
The first one will always not be the best one. Finding your therapist is kind of like, you know,
dating.
Well, no, I don't want to make it like that because dating is so tiring. But I mean, it's like they're applying for a job. Also, you have to do your own research and like do your due diligence when finding your therapist.
But a good therapist should help you break down your bad habits.
Actually listen to you.
Help you build more sustainable habits
and
that
coping
are contributing
mechanisms
to your happiness
and mental stability.
Yeah, so that's another tip.
Yeah, so
if this is difficult for you.
We're hitting the 40-minute mark. Do we have some things to wrap up?
Is there a final question or conclusion that you want to add?
Not really. All I have here, I guess, like some just like things just to throw out there. Again, self-love is the regard for one's own happiness. That is what we discussed. That's what self-love is. And everybody has their own way to find their own happiness. There are different ways to do that. I think best practice is to not put all your happiness in one basket. And when you diversify, it takes time to build those things, because if you, for example, tried out badminton and you didn't like it, well then try another thing. You know, it could be literally anything. What's the most random, I guess to wrap this up,
okay,
like super
hit me.
What's the most random activity or thing that you bought or experienced that like just made you happy? Like just out of nowhere.
I have
like
a
the
really
most random thing. Could be little, small, whatever, but just random.
This is weird. Like after this episode, most probably we'll unsubscribe. I'm just kidding. But you'll see how freaking weird I am.
Okay.
So it's no secret that I like pugs a lot. So I went to a pug event for pug owners, and I don't own a pug. I just went to pet other people's pugs. And there were at least 100 pugs in there. That is hands down one of the happiest days of my life. I just spent the whole day being licked and playing with pugs, other people's pugs. And I was basically an intruder in that whole event. But I enjoyed myself.
Well, the pugs must have loved the extra part, because like.
And you know what? I was kind of sad, like during that time.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, I just want to go play with pugs. Like that's gonna make me happy. And I literally Googled. That's the beauty of living in New York, people. Anything you can think of, that exists here.
That is true.
So I literally Googled, I think room full of pugs, or like pug meetup, something like that.
Oh man.
And I found it. It was a closed place, so it was indoors. It was just like a floor, an empty floor, and people brought their pugs, and the pugs play with each other, and the adults play with the pugs and mingled between them. I didn't mingle with any humans, just pugs though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I knew that was gonna make me happy, and it did. So don't be scared to go after the weird stuff that makes you happy, as long as you're not hurting anyone.
Yeah, the one thing that I did for myself this week that made me happy, I bought all pink things. Like I bought my pink mug, I bought my pink bowl, my little saucers. I'm a Filipino, so I like my sauces. It can't just like ketchup on no, because sometimes it's like soy sauce and it can't just be on like your plate. It's gotta be on a little platter. So I got 2 of those. This new notebook. Yeah, I just bought like pink things. I don't know. It was like, it didn't cost a lot. It was like under $20, like all my purchases. And I was just like, now I get to drink from my pink mug every morning with my pink French press. And like, that's how I start my day. That's how I get myself up at 6:30 in the morning because it's just too damn early. 6:30 is still too early. Like, I love it.
Earlier.
Oh, I'm not ready.
Whenever you're ready, baby.
All right. So I think with that, see you on Instagram in between uploads. See you next week.
See you next week. Can't believe I sent my pug story to the whole world now.